Welcome to everyone. How lovely to have you on board. I can't say how lovely to see you because I can't, or hear you because I can't. And I don't have to ask you to prove you're there by putting questions and comments in the chat, because you've already been doing that, which is absolutely wonderful. Thank you for spending some of your Saturday afternoon with us, which is really lovely. I'm going to hand you over to Naomi. She's my event organizer, my technical advisor, and just as it happens, my daughter as well. So basically, luckily I get away with not paying her at all, I hope. But she hasn't sent her bill in yet. Over to you, Naomi. She's going to tell you a little bit about webinars and how we hope things will pan out during the course of this afternoon, and hopefully nobody will be in a state of confusion except probably me. All right, okay. Over to you, Naomi.
I just thought I would run through how this webinar works, just in case there's anybody who hasn't used it before and isn't familiar with it. I can see that loads of you are already happy writing in the chat, which is great, but just in case there's people out there who haven't used this before, this is slightly different to a normal Zoom call, because normally we can see and hear each other and we can just talk normally via video. But in this, the only people that are able to be seen is the panelists, which is Mum and I. And you are all attendees, which means that we can talk to you via the chat, but we can't actually see or hear you. So that we can all communicate, there's just a couple of functions that you need to be familiar with. So on the bottom of your screen, you've got the chat function, and there's also another button that says Q&A. I'm just going to talk about the chat quickly first. If you click on your chat box, it will come up with a text box where you could write to us. And as I mentioned previously, there's the word to with a colon next to it. And if you click on the arrow next to that and select all panelists and all attendees, then that means that everybody in the chat can see what you're writing, which is just nice so that everybody can see those messages. And so as we go along, it would be great if you can, as you are doing, write messages in the chat, just so we know you're there and we know that you can hear us. And onto the Q&A, because that's a really important one. You can find that next to your chat on your block of controls at the bottom. So if you click on the Q&A, that comes up with another box and you can write questions to us. This is actually really handy if you can put your questions in the Q&A, because it saves it for us automatically, so we don't have to look through the chat to find the questions. It's just there, and it means that if we haven't answered your question, it will be there to remind us that we still need to come to it. So I don't know if anyone who hasn't used this before, if you want to practice maybe now, like writing us a quick hello in the chat, or a question in the Q&A, just to make sure that those are all working for you. Now might be a good time to do that. Lots of you have already written in, which is really great. So that's fab.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so that's lovely.
Hello, Jill. Lovely to see. Lovely to not see you.
Brilliant.
Claire doesn't have a Q&A button.
Well, hello, Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Claire, if you can't find the Q&A, then I'll try and answer your questions from the chat. Might just mean a bit of scrolling, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so that's great. Both those functions seem to be working fine, so that's fab. So there will be 2 moments this afternoon where we'll stop to answer questions. But if you think of anything as we go along, feel free to write it in the question Q&A or into the chat at any time, and we'll try and make sure we come to it in those moments. And the last thing I want to say is that technology is fab, but also it can be very temperamental. So if at some point our internet connection goes and I disappear from the screen or Mum disappears, then please bear with us and we'll try and get back into the call as soon as possible. I'm also going to be sharing my screen occasionally, and I'm going to be playing a video or 2. And unfortunately, sometimes the video can be out of sync. It just depends on your internet connection. So if that does happen to you, don't worry about it. It's just one of those Zoom things. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, Sarah's saying her caravan internet in the caravan is sometimes a bit dodgy.
Supo wants to know, where is Dad today? He's upstairs on another device. He's lurking upstairs, but he's present.
He is here. Right, I think that's everything from me on the tech side. So over to you, Mum, to say hello to everyone.
Oh, and I have to say hello to some people who've just come in, which is basically hello Buzz, hello Rosemary, hello Sarah, hello Kathy. Love to have you. Lovely to have you with us. If anybody else comes in, I'll try to greet you as that happens. But for now, I'm going to get stuck in to this long, boring spiel. No, not boring, I hope. Anyway, as always with this sort of thing, there's always somebody to thank. I'm not going to go into too much detail because there are so many people have helped, so many people have got me to where I am today, wherever that is. You know who you are, and I hope you know that you are sincerely appreciated. Some people that I'd like to say thank you to are the people who have accepted review copies of The Thorn of Truth and written and posted reviews. If you have a review already done, you can now post it on Amazon. Amazon are very strict. They won't let you post anything until publication day, but that was yesterday, so you can now do it. So I'm hoping that by the end of today, I go onto my Amazon page and find there are gazillions of them, because like many writers, I'm a terribly needy sort of person. I need lots of endorsements. Get those reviews out there if you would be so kind. And not only on Amazon, there are other places. Eden, Waterstones, Goodreads, they're all the sensible ones. I was going to suggest you put them anywhere you chose, but then perhaps the Goldfish Fanciers Gazette's not a good idea, nor is the Journal of the Brass Rubbers Association, probably a little bit out there. So, but reviews would be very, very welcome, and I think I speak for my entire cohort. The other people I must mention in particular are my two wonderful writing buddies. You know, that they've encouraged me, they've kept me on track, and they've listened to me moaning for a year and a bit that I haven't got another idea in my head. I'll never write another book because I can't think of anything. And they told me what nonsense, and fortunately they were right. More of that later. There's also a couple of things that I've asked them to do. I've asked them to provide a little something so that you don't just get to hear me chuntering on. And both of them have provided a short video or trailer. Deborah's is very like Deborah herself. Deborah is generous, kind, a little quirky at times, I have to say, but eminently comprehensible, if a little too flattering to me. Deborah, you're a treasure. Thank you. I should note that Deborah has a book coming out next year. Isn't that exciting? Please look out for it. Claire's is also characteristic of Claire. Now, you may be very surprised by this, those of you who don't know her well and think she's terribly serious, sober and sensible. I have to tell you, she really isn't. Excuse me, I just have to check my notes sometimes. Even though she is the author of an acclaimed 5-book series, and she's currently engaged in writing a historical tetralogy, that's 4 books, which would probably cause the average bookshelf to collapse, because there's a great deal of it and all of it is wonderful. She is certainly very clever, very inventive, but I have to tell you, she's also completely bonkers. And whatever she says, I haven't paid her one single penny. She claims all sorts of things which are not true. Seriously, I'm hugely grateful to both of them for all their advice, their friendship and their support. And yes, Deborah, you're very welcome. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the sort of launches that I've had in the past, because obviously this is my 8th book, and until 2017 I would have a launch for each book, which was basically a party, food, drink, people actually there in the flesh, which was brilliant. And now we can't do that anymore. So all those of you out there who have been to those in the past, I'm really sorry that you've had to provide your own refreshments. One day maybe we'll get back to having a party, and wouldn't that be great? So those events I would normally be sitting there talking to people, perhaps being interviewed, signing books, and there'd be a glass of something at my elbow. Whereas all I've got today is water. Promise, it really is water. Right. People sometimes ask me, how did I get to where I am today? Wherever that is, I'm not entirely sure. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my own writing journey, chiefly this is directed at my fellow writers, because I know that they are in places where I often am and have been. Briefly, I'll be brief as I can here. I think I was probably in the cradle. I was destined to be a writer because I've been making things up ever since I was very, very small. And I think a tendency to tell tall stories is in my genes. So there I should say, thank you, Grandad. He used to tell terrible tall stories. Sometimes he lifted them straight out of the evening paper, so I understand. By the time I was in my teens, I'd collected quite a few rejection slips. Had you asked me at the age of 13 what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would almost certainly have said, I want to be an author. Unfortunately, youthful confidence soon dissipated, and I began to realise that there was no way I could earn my living doing this, sadly. I did continue well into my 20s and 30s. I was writing children's stories and poetry. But then, unfortunately, life came along and hit me on the head, as it usually does, and we have to fast forward quite a number of years. But by then, I think that curious mental itch that is there all the time had got very intense suddenly. I went away with a group of friends, and I was obviously moaning and whinging and saying, oh, I don't want to be doing what I'm doing. I want to be writing this book, blah, blah, blah. And my tough-minded friends, and here I have to say thank you, Sandra, if you're there, because you were one of them, they gave me a challenge. They said, get this book written by your 50th birthday. That's how long it took. And by then I was had a very busy life, 2 young children. Thanks, Pat. You actually remember that. That's wonderful. Pat has just messaged me to say she remembers a kid's book that I wrote many, many years ago in my 20s. Now, where have we got to? Excuse, I just glance at my notes here, because I don't want to leave anything out, do I, really? So I did. I wrote this. I obviously took up the challenge and I wrote this book, and I wrote it with weeks to spare, which is, I don't quite know how I did that. But then things got a little bit sticky. I sent it to an American editor. There's a reason for sending it to an American editor. She was very helpful. She told me in no small, well, uncertain terms that I really needed to edit it big time. At the same sort of time, I submitted to various agencies and various publishers on both sides of the pond and received many a resounding rejection. I went to writers' conferences, I joined a critique group, but realistically, who was going to look at me? A rookie with no background, writing in the most unfashionable genre. So that manuscript went in a drawer, the proverbial drawer, but I hadn't forgotten about it. A few more years passed, actually 8 more years, 8 whole more years before that book came out, and I decided to self-publish it. And I'm glad I did decide to do it then, because that was in 2009, and the book came out in its physical form with a proper cover and printed pages in time for my dad to see it, because he died not long after. So I think that was a very good decision, and possibly not taken entirely by me. But by then, of course, the bug had bitten. 1 became 2, 2 became 3, a trilogy. Yeah. And then I wrote a standalone. Oh dear. And then catastrophe happened, because the little company that I used to publish them suddenly ceased to trade overnight. Overnight, all my books disappeared from the internet. It was awful. But not just mine, but thousands of people were affected. Luckily, someone else took us all on. Whew, huge sigh of relief. I got out of my pajamas probably about midnight, because I hadn't even bothered to get dressed. I was so worried. And another company took us over, and it was them who oversaw the publication of book number 5, An Iron Yoke. Then everything changed again. I was fortunate to be offered a publishing contract by a company that some of you will be familiar with. Instant Apostle. And I have to say, they are a lovely company, a very fine company, run by excellent people. And I still say that that cover design is the very best one. It's superb. So thank you, Instant Apostle. Where did I go? I wrote another book. I intended it just as a standalone. But through the very good offices of my dear friend Claire and a delightful commissioning editor who might be here today, but if she's not, and you know her, please pass on my thanks to the lovely Jess. Thanks to them, I got a publishing contract with Lion Fiction. At the time, and still now, I think, how did that happen? I was asked if I might make a series of it, but I'd written it as a standalone. So we had a bit of a think, and we decided, I say we, this is me and various other people, including people who know better about these things, that it would be a good idea if we wrote another one with the same background, a different protagonist, but drawing forward into it some of the characters from the previous book, which I did. So here you have it. If you've read The Healing Knife, which is what it was, you'll know that, I can tell you, or you'll know if you've read The Thorn of Truth already, that some of the characters from The Healing Knife are present again in The Thorn of Truth. And there you have it. That's where I am today. Yesterday, The Thorn of Truth was published after a very long gap, as these things, that's the way it happens in this business. It's a long time between putting the final full stop on your first draft and actually seeing it out there. Have I got anything else to say? Oh yeah, well, yes, why have I told you all this? The reason why I told you all this is really because it's directed to those of you who may be on a similar journey to my own, perhaps in a different place. Obviously, we're all on a different place because we're all doing different things. But I really didn't know what I was doing. I sometimes think whether I know what I'm doing now, but certainly then, and in the beginning and along the way, I didn't know what I was doing at all. I bumbled, I missed opportunities, I made lots of mistakes. And I suffered like you do, like many of you do, I know that, from imposter syndrome. I still do. I asked myself this question: well, who's ever's going to read what I write? I still ask that question. It doesn't really matter where you are, you're still going to ask yourself those questions and have those doubts. It's part of the deal, I think. But somehow I kept going. I always try to learn from other people, either people in the flesh or books or whatever, but to follow my own style, because what else can you do? You can't write as somebody else, you can only write as yourself. And I tried to keep on believing that whatever the outcome was, that I was and am doing what God had asked of me and equipped me to do. And I have to tell you, so can you. Enough of me. Now there's going to be a video clip from the lovely Deborah, and I'm going to hand you over to my technical manager to start playing it.
Okay, hopefully this works, everybody. Let's give it a go. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Deborah, and I was very flattered to have been asked by Sue to share a few words at the launch of her new book, The Thorn of Truth. The reason that I'm flattered is that although I would say I know Sue quite well, I haven't known her for that long. We have met a few times in the flesh, as it were, but it's only really since the beginning of COVID, I would say, as part of a small online writers group, that we've got to know each other really well. So I am very flattered to have been asked. So I thought, what can I say about Sue and her books? Well, although I feel I haven't known Sue well for that long, I have read all her books, and I am a great fan. And I think Sue is reflected, her personality is reflected very clearly in her books. I guess that's the same with all writers to a certain extent. But what I've learned about Sue over the past year is that she's a very warm, generous person, very supportive, very kind. She has a wicked sense of humour. We certainly share that enjoyment of the crazy and inappropriate. And when we've talked together about writing or about life, she always seems to offer a new, unique perspective. And these are all qualities of her books, and I think it's why I love her books so much. And The Thorn of Truth is no exception. I am privileged to have already read the book and reviewed it. And what I can say about The Thorn of Truth is that it's like Sue. It's a warm, generous read. It has humour. It has interest. It's really engaging. And it teaches me something new. All Sue's books have that unique way of teaching you something, whether it's about the world of law or medicine or just perhaps the nature of loss. So I cannot recommend this book more highly. I know you will enjoy it. A Thorn of Truth, her latest book, and a book that reflects Sue's fabulous personality in so many ways. So go and buy it.
Thanks, Deborah.
Amazing. So, Mum, I think we're going to have a question time moment. So I'm going to kick things off by asking you to tell us about your very snazzy background that you've got at the moment, because you've got 2 books behind you. We can just see it says The Thorn of something behind the sofa, and then on the other side is The Healing Knife. So do you want to just tell us a bit about The Healing Knife?
Yeah, the reason you've got both the books there's 2 reasons really. One is that they are linked. I mean, you can read The Thorn of Truth and not be baffled, I hope. But it does actually help to read The Healing Knife first, because you'll get more of an acquaintance with the characters, which is obviously got to be a good thing. But the other reason is that in the world of publishing, as I mentioned before, the final full stop to the time it comes out is often a very long time, and it's planned to the day. The day that the Healing Knife was supposed to come out and did come out was the 20th of March 2020. What a terrible, terrible day to come out. 3 days before the first lockdown was in force. So as a result of that, bookshops were closing. International book fairs were cancelled. All marketing went online, and I had to really battle so that book didn't disappear down a great big black hole of oblivion because of lack of publicity opportunities. So I thought, well, let's mention it now rather than have it some kind of poor little orphan which suffered from lockdown blues, so that you know that it's there, those of you who don't, and that it's not. And the fact that somebody got a mask on is nothing to do with COVID, by the way. It is because the protagonist is a surgeon. Okay, nothing to do with current circumstances at all. So that's the reason that there are 2 books in this background.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So there are some questions in the Q&A. Okay. There is one from Sheila, and she says, how much of your story is based on personal experience, or does it represent an amazing amount of research?
If you're talking about The Thorn of Truth, it doesn't represent any of my personal experience. Contrary to some people who have been spreading wicked rumours, I have never been in court except for research. I've never been in jail. I've never committed a crime that I've been found out for. It is an area that I really am interested in, though. I only ever write about things that interest me, and I hope if they don't interest me, I guess they're not going to interest anybody else. So I've always been interested in the workings of the law. So yes, it does involve a lot of research, a lot of reading. I love researching anyway. And also you'll see in the acknowledgements that I've acknowledged a very fine chap that I've never actually met in the flesh, a barrister who operates in the north and who helped me and put me right when I'd gone a bit off. So we had a long correspondence by email where he was very helpful. Other than that, I did a great deal of reading and researching, and I hope that I've got most of it right. When it comes to research, my principle is usually if I'm not sure about something, and if I can, I'll leave it out rather than make a big blunder. But I try to get things at least to be plausible, and I will always try to get people who know what they're talking about to read the relevant bits to make sure I haven't said something that couldn't happen.
Great, okay. And Julia has asked you how you came up with the idea and plot for the book. So obviously you've done a lot of research, but where did the idea come from?
I just don't know. This has been asked of me loads of times, and I don't know if anybody else can answer. I mean, maybe other people can say, I got this idea because I was on a train and I heard somebody speaking, or I looked at a hoarding and I thought, oh, that will do. It never happens for me that way. I really don't know where they come from. The ether, things that I'm interested in. I just don't know.
Nice.
But the plot, I was helped a great deal by the plot, because the plot gave me a lot of headaches, and it gave a lot of headaches to other people too. And I did have some help from friends with that.
So bouncing ideas of other people is always good.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. So Sophia has asked, and this is very important, you'll like this question, apart from Amazon and Goodreads, where else can we post a review of the book?
Eden.
Do you want to just say what Eden is? Because I'm not sure if
Eden is a Christian bookshop which operates online. Waterstones is a very well-known national bookshop which also will accept reviews. You may have to set up an account or register in some way, I'm not sure, but people have managed it, so I know it's possible.
Great, okay. I really like this question from Fran. She says, do your characters ever do their own thing despite your intentions for them?
Oh, yes, they do. Suddenly a thing comes, something usually in dialogue, if they're having a conversation, they say something, I think, oh yes. Ah, they might, that might be a way to go. You get little light bulb moments. No, I'm definitely not in total control.
So your characters kind of take on their lives of their own.
They don't sort of like go completely out of control, but yeah, there are moments when they tell me something new about themselves that I might not have thought of.
Cool. Okay, I think we'll just take one more question now, and then there'll be another moment later on where we'll go back if we haven't answered any. So I'm just going to take, Sheila's just asked, do you plan your plot closely beforehand? She notices your plots often go in a totally different direction to what she was expecting.
Yes, I do. I'm a plotter, not a pantser. I would feel absolutely lost without a really quite strict skeleton. Having said that, there are ideas do pop up along the way where things can take a slightly different route. But I know that you're probably referring to, well, I don't know if you're referring to either both of these books, I'm not sure, but certainly with both of them actually. No, they were plotted right to the end. I knew exactly what was going to happen. But then I do have like ideas as I go along, which then are incorporated. It's not plotted to the finest detail of every scene or every paragraph, nothing like that. That would be boring to write, wouldn't it? But the structure's there.
Okay, great. So we will come back and answer anything that we haven't had time to do just now.
We've got quite a few in the chat as well. Can you see that?
Yeah, I'll have a look at those and we'll answer those a bit later on.
Okay,
so Mum, it's quiz time.
Oh, what you've all been waiting for, the quiz. I have to tell you, is it all right for me to say this now?
Yeah.
We said this was going to be a light-hearted quiz. In fact, it's very silly. Okay.
Yes, it is.
So if we have anyone here who's of a very serious turn of mind, this is probably the best time to go and put the kettle on.
But don't, because you'll miss all the fun.
It's really daft. Now, with all of the quiz, there will be a prize later on, but for all this, most of the quiz, there isn't. It's just get the questions right. It's also a very sneaky way that we've found of advertising all my books. Aren't we clever?
Yes,
right. Naomi will tell you. She's going to tell you all about the quiz.
I'm just going to share my screen with you. And just before I do, well, I'll do it now, actually. When we do the quiz, it would be brilliant if you can write your answers in the chat as we go along. And it might be that once this goes full screen, you can't see your chat anymore. So we'll just try that out and see what happens.
They're still there for me, Arms.
Okay, so if for some reason your chat has disappeared now, you can double click on the screen, and that should mean that you're able to see the chat as well, because we'd love you to write your answers in the chat as we go along. Hopefully that's okay for everybody.
Right, so Naomi's the quiz
okay.
mistress. I'm taking a back seat here.
Yeah. So, Mum, you can keep an eye on the chat and see if everyone's getting the right answers.
Oh,
And the
you
first thing
think?
to do is my favourite animation, which should make your head spin round. There we go. Okay, so yeah, as Mum said, this is not serious at all. I'm going to take you on a little tour of the books that Mum's written, and if you've read them all before, that's great. This will just sort of test your knowledge, and if you haven't read them, then hopefully you might just learn a little bit more about books and also about Mum. There's a couple of questions about Mum in there. So it's going to be multiple choice, except for the very last question. As Mum mentioned, there is going to be a prize. So the last question is quite a tough one. So we thought that the 3 closest answers would get a prize. Was that, are you telling me something there, Ma?
Oh, we're frozen. Please come back, internet.
Can you hear me, Mum?
Yeah, you froze for a while. I heard the 3, and then you froze.
Okay, well, just in case anyone missed that, the 3 closest answers who answer for the last question will be prize winners, and no guesses for what the prize is. It's going to be a free signed copy of the Thorn of Truth. So it's all to play for, but the first few questions are just multiple choice. So let's give it a go. Let's go to question number 1. Oh, it's a bit previous. Okay, so Sue is known for her interesting and often quite unusual choices when it comes to titles for her books. Her first book, published in 2019, tells the story of Eileen.
2009.
Oh, sorry, that is what I meant to say. 2009, excuse me. Tells the story of Eileen when she meets Christopher, a young man with a mental illness living rough in the woods near her home. The title of the book, as you can see there, is Leviathan with a Fishhook. But what is a Leviathan? Is it A, a mythical sea monster, B, a brand of jeans, or C, a breed of Bulgarian horse? Oh, great. I can see lots of A's coming in. This is good. Good, good to see that you know what's going on. Well done, everyone. It was a mythical sea monster. Okay, well done.
Good choice.
So, question number 2. Sue's second book is a sequel to Leviathan with a Fishhook and continues to develop Eileen's story. The book has yet another unusual title, The Monster Behemoth. But what is a behemoth? Is it A, a beetle found only on chalk hills, B, a tourist bus in Malta, or C, a mythical land monster? Very good.
Oh, they're on the ball this lot, aren't they, eh?
So that's good. Well done, everybody. Oh,
It was.
for A, interesting. Okay, I can really reveal it is C, a mythical land monster. Question 3. So, Sue's first 5 books were self-published, which meant she had quite a lot of freedom to create the designs for her book covers. Her and my dad, Derek, enjoyed taking their camera and going on adventures to find the perfect places which would then become the cover for a new book. The third book, The Land of Nimrod, the cover features a very intense fire. But where did this fiery cover image come from? Was it A, the furnace of the Scunthorpe Steelworks, B, as a result of Sue burning a pizza, or C, a bonfire in France? Oh, I was really hoping people would go for the pizza one.
Oh, look, they all know the answer. Aren't they clever?
It was C. It was C. Well done, everybody. Okay, question 4. This is another cover image taken by Mum and Dad. It's for the 4th book. Mum wrote A Shed in a Cucumber Field, which was her first standalone novel and tells the story of estranged sisters Vic and Belle. The image was taken in a moment of inspiration while on holiday, but what do you think the image is actually of? Is it A, a shepherd's hut in Gozo, B, a derelict farm building in Mallorca, or C, a disused temple in Laos? What do we reckon? Oh, interesting. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, most people have got it right. Yeah, very good.
It is B, a derelict farm building in Mallorca. Mum, I don't think you've been to Gozo, have you?
Yes.
Oh, you have?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I've never been to Laos.
Well, I have, but
I know.
So, question 5. Everyone's doing very well so far. Well done. So, Sue's 5th book and her 2nd standalone novel features a quiet village disrupted by the murder of a disabled woman. The cover of this book features quite an unusual stained glass window. Where in the world do you think that this stained glass window can be found? Is it A, Canterbury Cathedral, B, the ladies' toilet of the Hare and Hounds, Brinkley Green, or C, the Basilica of St. Peter's in Rome?
Deborah thinks it's the ladies' toilet.
Good. Someone had to go for that. Estonia.
Yes, why am I not surprised?
It is, in fact, St. Peter's in Rome. Lots of your holiday snaps going into the
oh, yes.
Okay, lovely. So on to question 6. So this is a little bit about Mum. So the protagonist of Mum's 6th book, A Vision of Locusts, is a teenage girl called Abby who's troubled by disturbing visions. Abby comes from a half English and half Indian family, and a section of this book takes place in India. Mum has always been interested by different cultures, and she herself spent 2 years living in a foreign country. Although it was nearly 50 years ago, she still claims that she can remember some of the language if you test her. So question 6 is, which country did Sue live in for 2 years when she was 21 years old? Was it A, Indonesia, B, Kenya, or C, Japan? It's a bit unfair, but I thought I'd put it in there. Quite cool. C. Nice.
I think they've been colluding.
Maybe, or some people.
Well, no, I mean, this is a bit of a naughty one, because I mean, if you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't.
It's just, fun facts about the author, Mum. Okay, so I will tell you the answer. It is Indonesia.
Yeah.
And Mum, did you want to give us some Indonesian while you're there?
Yeah, selamat pagi. Actually, that means good morning. Well, it's a bit past morning. Let's see, what was selamat sore? That's good evening.
Nice. Okay. And question 7. Sue's 7th book, The Healing Knife, features Rachel, who is a career-obsessed surgeon who suffers an injury which has the potential to ruin her career. She spends a period of her recovery at a friend's holiday home where she's able to find time to rest and to heal. Sue and Derek also have a holiday home which they really love to visit. Where is the holiday home? Is it A, Spain, B, Italy, or C, France?
Everybody knows.
Yeah, everybody knows this one. Love it. Yeah, that's right. It is C, it's France. Okay, great. So we're now on to the bonus question, and this is the one where there is a prize of a free signed copy up for grabs. So it's quite tough, but here it is, and please put your answers in the chat. while Mum's doing her reading, which will happen just in a moment, I will go through all the answers and try and work out who's the closest so we can see who has won the prize. So here's the question. It is, the Thorn of Truth has 328 pages. To the nearest 1,000, how many words do you think there are? So how many words are there in the whole book, which has 328 pages? And we're looking for the answer, the nearest 1,000. Great. Cool. So I'll give you a minute or two. Brilliant. Answers coming in. Okay, fab.
Wow.
And we just got to turn your head around one more time.
I'm
Great.
feeling dizzy already.
Well done, everyone. I'll stop sharing for now. Fabulous. And Mum, while you're doing a reading, I will try and work out who has got the closest to the answer.
All right. Lovely. I'll rely on you.
So let me just make you centre stage, Mum.
Ta-da!
I'll just spotlight you. There you
Whoa.
are. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
I've picked a couple of pages from the Thorn of Truth, which I don't want to give away any of the plot or the sort of dramatic denouement, otherwise you'll never read it. But I wanted to do a bit that was reasonably dramatic. Okay, so here we go. Alistair and Catherine's house was on the other side of the river from mine, on the outskirts of the city, so thankfully I was able to avoid the centre. I parked in the road by their driveway and walked up to their front door, which was open. I left my files in the car. I'd caught sight of Al in the small front room, which served as his study. He was on the phone and waved when he saw me. Otherwise, no one seemed to be about, so I called up the stairs. Soon Sam came bounding down and enveloped me in a hug. "Auntie Nana, Millie's here, Millie's here." Millie came down the stairs behind him. "Hi, Mum, you okay?" "As far as we can be, love. Where's your aunt?" "No idea. There's some sandwiches in the kitchen if you're hungry." "We are, aren't we, Sam?" Sam grinned and grabbed Millie's hand. "Yeah, but I don't want a sandwich. I want cake." "Okay, let's see if there is any. Come on, Mum." In the kitchen, I sat on a high stool and kicked off my shoes. I rubbed my feet with a sigh of mingled pain and relief. Millie found a plate for me and piled it with sandwiches. She put the kettle on without asking me if I wanted anything. She knew me well. Sam was rooting about in the larder and emerged with a look of beaming triumph, holding a blue and gold tin in both hands. "Cake!" "You sure your mum isn't saving it for something, Samuel?" Millie said. Her tone was stern, but Sam giggled. He wasn't fooled. "No, she isn't." A voice came from the doorway, a voice that sounded as if it had blown directly from the Arctic. "Help yourself." "Hello, Anna." My sister-in-law was leaning on the doorframe, her arms held down by her sides, her hands clenched. Normally, I maintained civil relations with all my brother's wives, though I wouldn't have called any of them friends, even after so many years. But today the very air smelled hostile, a sheer sign that for Catherine I was a traitor. "Hello, Catherine," I said, deliberately keeping my voice low and even. "Has there been any news?" "Not that I've heard." She turned away from me. "Is that tea you're making, Millie?" "Yes, I'd love some, thank you." We all watched in silence as Millie poured tea for herself and us, and made a cold drink for Sam, who was obliviously munching cake. Mug in hand, Catherine turned back to me, and I saw she was preparing her weapons. "So," she said, "in court today, weren't you?" "So Alistair said." "Defending? Not that evil man, I hope?" Her voice was brittle. "No, it was a fraud case in Tuxton." "I see. But you are going to defend him, aren't you?" I saw Millie frown. I turned to look Catherine in the eye and saw her flinch. "If you are determined to have this conversation," I murmured, "despite the other pressing concerns we have today, could we please not have it in front of the children?" Millie didn't let me down. She took her cousin's hand, the one empty of cake. Come on, Sammy, let's go and watch a film in the other room. I'll bring your drink. When we were alone, I said to Catherine, yes, in answer to your question, I have accepted the brief. Do you have a problem with that? I saw her fists clench and unclench. You know perfectly well I do. And why? I sighed. But Catherine, it's my job. I don't pick and choose. It's the cab rank rule apart from anything else. The what? I'm sure I've mentioned it before. I'm obliged to accept a solicitor's instructions if I am the next barrister available and sufficiently qualified, whether or not the client or the case is personally repugnant, as they are. Surely you know that. Frankly, I don't seem to know anything any more. I heard her voice tremble, and I felt a wave of pity. But I don't buy that stuff about you having to do it. I'm sure there are ways to refuse. Aren't you head of chambers? Not exactly. There's no such person in our setup, but yes, I am the senior, and you're right. There are ways to avoid the rule, but they are narrow. I paused, watching her, preparing my words. The fact is, I'm not permitted to allow my opinions about the character, reputation, conduct, guilt, or innocence of any potential client to colour my judgment. But I did choose to take this client on, quite apart from that, and I did it with good reason. She took a step forward, her face flushed. How could you? She demanded. What possible reason could outweigh what he did to Sam and all the other heedless children, not to mention Liam's parents, his friend who died? Catherine, please. You're Sam's mother, and of course what happened to him is dreadful for you and Al and all the family. As Sam's aunt, it grieves me too. How can I believe you? You use all that skill with words to defeat me, but I just can't believe a word you say. If you had any real feeling for Sam or for us, you'd have turned that monster down flat. I shook my head and spoke quietly. I'm afraid there are other considerations, and I can't really discuss them while the case is ongoing. I wish you had more faith in me. How can I? The evidence of your selfishness is right in front of my eyes. It's always been the same, ever since I've known you. What Anna wants, Anna gets, and to blazes with anyone else's feelings. You use all those barristers' tricks to argue black is white, and everyone thinks you're so very wonderful. I don't know how you get away with it. Kath, enough. My eyes swiveled to the door. Alistair stood there, Sam at his side, his eyes round and anxious. Mum, why are you cross? He said, his brow furrowing. Catherine turned to look at him, her mouth open in a soundless wail. Millie, coming up behind Sam, took her cousin's arm. Hey, Sambo, she said soothingly. You know what grown-ups are like. They're always off on one. Come on, let's go and finish your film. She gave us a reproachful shake of her head and led Sam away. Alistair came into the kitchen. He held Catherine by both elbows. I saw she was shaking. This isn't helping, love, he said gently, especially not today. To my dismay, Catherine was crying, trying to swallow her tears and failing. She shook him off, ran out of the room and up the stairs. A door banged. That's it.
Fabulous. Amazing. I've just been frantically trying to work out who won the quiz. But before
Were you successful?
I hope you enjoyed that reading. But before we reveal the winners, we're going to have another moment for questions. We haven't got that much time, Mum, so we'll just have to choose a few. Do you want to choose some questions, Mum? Can you see them?
Yes, okay. I'll just have a quick look.
Karen has asked if you're working on anything at the moment. That might be quite nice to answer.
Yep. Well, I had a big moan earlier, didn't I? I told you that for a whole year I couldn't think of a single thing. But yes, I am working on something now, and it's another one in this sort of series, in that it takes place in the same area, the fictional city of Brent. It even takes place in the same barrister's chambers, but it's about somebody else. So you'll meet Anna again if you've read. When you read The Thorn of Truth, you'll meet her. You'll meet her again, and but she's not the heroine anymore. There's somebody else whose story it is. So we're doing the same thing as before and drawing through to the next book characters from the previous one. Okay, yes, I am. I'm about, I don't know, I better not tell you how far in I am. About 100 pages.
Fab. Okay. Any other question? Mum, do you want to have a look
I'll
and
quick
see
look.
if there's anything you like
Oh,
to...
Sophia wants to know, did I consciously want to share that Christian liars have to stick with their job? Not at all. This is fiction, Sophia, and I'm not trying to tell anybody anything. People must go with their own conscience, with the specific set of circumstances that they're dealt.
Yeah, great. And Stephen's question is really interesting.
Do I know the end of the book before I start writing? Absolutely. I do. I mean, it may not be exactly the same as I envisaged, but generally it will be.
I'm just looking
Pat
in the
wants to
chat
know if most of my
quickly.
books feature women as the main character. Is this deliberate? Well, this may sound very strange, but I don't actually know that I could write about with a man as a main protagonist, because you'll probably note that in most of my books I have lots of men, and most of them are really nice. Not all of them, but most of them are really nice. I've not got a thing about I hate men or anything. I really don't. But I don't feel that I could get inside their heads sufficiently. Whereas women, I just feel that they're going to think, to a degree, they're going to think a bit like I do. They're going to have similar things that worry them and so on. But I mean, obviously, everybody's unique and different. But I don't feel confident about writing about men as if I've got to be inside their heads, because they're awfully mysterious, aren't they, men? Don't you think?
And say, Mum, maybe that's your next challenge.
Oh no,
Who knows?
I have been criticised in the past for when I wrote short stories for my critique group. I've been criticised by some for having male characters that sound like girls.
Interesting.
So maybe I'm no good at writing about men. I don't know.
Jane says, are your books available as audiobook? Which they're not.
They're not, Jane. They're not. And I'll tell you, it's very costly to make a book an audiobook. I'd love to have them as audiobooks, and maybe I will explore that avenue, because I would really like them to be, but it's quite difficult quite costly to convert them.
Just need to make friends with Stephen Fry and get him to do that for you. It'll be fine.
Yes, that'd be brilliant.
Okay, I think maybe let's just do one more question. Sorry that we're running out of time, but Mum, do you want to choose one that you'd like to answer?
Have I ever written myself into a corner? Nope. No, because not really. I do have problems sometimes. I think, how am I going to get around this one? And normally I'll do it either by doing a bit more research or by leaving something out so that I can't be tripped up. I plot too carefully to really be in a corner.
Okay, great.
Mainly the reason for that is a very selfish one, is that while I'll edit till the cows come home, I detest major rewriting, and I never want to have to do it if I can help it.
So once it's down, that's it, apart from the editing.
Oh, well, yeah, and it will be. I mean, if people make suggestions, obviously I will incorporate them, but major rewrites because I've got a big plot hole, oh, no thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much for all your really interesting questions. They've all been brilliant.
Hey, Julie Baker, do you like your own book? Yeah, of course I do.
Well, on that note, I think we'll leave it there for the questions. I'm sure you all really enjoyed that reading. I know I did. It's very dramatic. So I can reveal who
could it be?
Lucky winners of a signed copy. And Mum, I have to say there were 4 people who had very close answers.
Well, the 4 of them can have a book then.
We'll do 4 free copies. So let me just find.
We were a bit worried in case there were about 200 people who got it right, because I don't have that many copies.
The answer is 97,029 words. That's right, Mum?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So we had Sheila Robinson and Sophia, who answered with 100,000. So well done. Stephen answered with 98,500.
Whoa.
Karen McVeigh, 98,000. She was the closest, and I promise I didn't tell her the answer in advance, even though she is.
Oh, there'll be trouble, I tell you.
So well done, everybody, and we'll get in touch with you to let you know how you can get your free copy.
Can I just chip in there? Some of these people have already got a book, I know.
Okay.
And obviously they can give their free one away. They may choose not to have it signed if they'd rather. Some people don't want it signed, so do say if you'd rather not. Okay, and I'll just send you the book.
We'll get in touch with you afterwards.
Yeah, we'll be in touch with you. You can make your own choice.
We should have your email address so we can contact you and let you know what to do after this.
You're welcome, Kaz.
So the only thing left to say really is if you didn't sadly win a free copy, how can you get the book? Thank you, Hilda. I'm just about to answer that question for you. So you can go online to Amazon or to Waterstones, or as Mum mentioned, there's also the Eden Christian Bookshop, which is also online. And any of those places, if you just search for the book title, The Thorn of Truth by S.L. Russell, then that will come up and you can order your copy.
Can I just mention, sorry to interrupt, some of these places actually are cheaper than others, so do a bit of research.
Mum, you're not supposed to tell people about cheaper options.
But the other thing also is that you can, if you want to, and I know Fran does this, support your local bookshop by getting them to order it.
Yeah, okay. But you can also download it to Kindle. That's the other thing. If anybody out there is really keen and would like to have a signed copy, then we will send you, we've got a little order form, so you can get that from Mum and I. And someone's just posted that they can't find it on Amazon. We'll also email you the link to the book on Amazon. It could just be that you need to look on amazon.co.uk rather than amazon.com. Sometimes
no, it isn't on amazon.com, and if Tony's doing it from France, you've probably got amazon.com, Tony, haven't you? So it will be on .com, but I don't think they've got round to putting it there yet, because one of my American reviewers is tearing her hair out because she can't find it there. So you have to go to the UK branch of Amazon to find it.
So what we'll do is after this webinar, we will email you all and just put the link to the book on Amazon, and also we'll send you the order form in case you'd really like a signed copy, and then Mum and I can get that sorted for you. We're just out of time now, Mum. So
oh, hang on, there's another thing to do yet.
Yes, I know. So I was just going to say the last thing we'd just like to share with you, Mum. I think you want to introduce it.
Yes. Now, earlier on, I claimed that my dear friend and wonderful advisor, one of them, but my book buddy Claire, who is a fabulous writer, is also a bit mad, and I'm going to prove that to you now. She has provided for me I had no idea what she was going to do. I just asked her to do something, and she's provided me with this book trailer, which I absolutely hooted with laughter when I saw, and I hope that you do too. So over to you, and thanks, Claire. It's brilliant. Over to you,
Yeah, just going to try and share my screen. Hope this works. Here we go. Please enjoy The Legend made by Claire. Amazing. Thank you, Claire. That was fantastic.
Guys, we have run out of time. If you've got loads more questions, you can email me, you can message me on Facebook, whatever other mode of communication. I'll be very happy. And if you want to, you could also go to my website. I don't know if any of you know my website. Well, Omi will send you a link to my website, I'm sure. There is also a link to my blog, and there's a contact page on the website. So there are ways to pin me down and ask any questions that I haven't answered yet. And thank you all so much for coming and having a bit of fun with us this afternoon.